Uh, Thank you, Dr. Mayor. Good afternoon, everyone. It's my pleasure to be here and share some thoughts and best practices on IP management. So, let me begin with. Sorry. It's not going back. It's taking a long time. Stuck. Okay. Yeah, sorry. So many companies are dying, before they reach 20 years of age. This is an analysis by, one of the firm actually, it's published in Harvard. It's called Living Organization. 1/3 of the firms which you see, which is disappeared after 13 years. It's not that, these companies are really winded up and closed down or something. It's basically they become victims of mergers and acquisition, balkanization to small companies, or liquidations or something. So, how these special firms lived longer actually. If you see, Swedish Stora is really unbelievable, 700 years old living company. Sumitomo is a 415 years old company, and then Mutsam, it's 300 years old company. DuPont, if it's a 200 years, Procter & Gamble is 175, Siemens is 165, General Electric is 124. If you see, the very fundamentals, actually, they have a best practices in place, and innovation made them to be always alive because they keep on changing their business and based on the new technologies, and then what they started with, actually, they are not in the same business today, actually. So, in the same way, I just wanted to draw a line with how IP management can really have those kind of best systems in place, which can really drive the organization to the great extent. So today, the world is all about the less material and more intellect. Actually, if you see value over time, over a period of time, the people are involved with agriculture more, and the industrial age has really picked up. And then India was not really able to really take up the best part of those industrial age. But information age, really India was able to make a big impact. A lot of IT companies came in, and then it has really made a big impact, and the whole world came to know that the softwares can be made in Bangalore. So if you see, the next is basically all about the innovation age, the creation intensification. The focus will be on what exactly you can add value to the customer. The customer may ask for ice cream, how we can give ice cream with a topping, so how we can add value to them. So if you see the only, the IT companies, when you started with, actually they start with the body shopping and the offsite development kind of activities. Over a period of time, that the value, what they encourage, the project and consulting, you give me a problem, I'll identify the project for you, and then try to enhance the value to you. So now actually, if you see, the more companies are focused towards, the IP-based value creation, and then the kind of innovation which is happening in India, it's for MNCs is immense actually. So the focus is actually most of the MNCs in India, now if you see few years, the few years back, actually it was always a brick and mortar kind of activity they used to do. Today, if you see these companies, actually they are really creating IPs. You can see the moment you enter those organizations, you can see a list of inventors, mentioning about the patent number and the patent references. That shows that the India is really is moving towards creation intensification from just a brick and mortar activities. So measuring innovation, if you say it become a norms, if you see any magazines or any kind of business reports, actually today the people are focusing on innovation, whether it is Accenture, whether it's Deloitte or Forbes, right? Any magazine or any reports, actually the focus is innovation. Even in the recent talk by Professor Vijay Govindarajan, he said that the strategy is nothing but innovation. So the strategy is going towards more about innovation. When I looked at what exactly the innovation, actually what are the parameters for innovation? So one of the things is the kind of R&D spending which is happening. That's definitely, it's very important for we as a patent professionals actually, unless the R&D investment happen, where the patent will come from actually. So I just picked up one of the the 2009 and 10 actually report. This out of these 34 companies, actually, the top R&D spenders, actually, it's from India, actually, hardly 6 companies. That to 3 companies are from the pharma. So the rest of the company, what exactly they are doing? Even though we talk very high about our software engineering capabilities, I think the kind of IPs which is coming from India is very, very minimal. And then out of that, actually, 34 companies, we see from 23 companies are from China. That's the kind of impact which is the China is bringing in. So the number of PCT applications, the recent WIPO statistics actually also says that actually the China and the China and Korea, they are, I can say, in the 10 to 15 times, it's much ahead of what India filings are. So this is also an interesting quote, right? The McKinsey says, the China's next export is innovation. That made me a lot of curiosity, what exactly the export from China are going to happen. So the goal is interesting, the 2 million patents by 2015. That shows that the kind of the aggressiveness, what exactly the China is looking at in patent filing. So to identify the innovation indicators exactly, I just looked at what exactly the innovation indicators are, what are the parameters. So if you see in 50s, actually, if you do an R&D activity, that isn't all about it is an innovation activity. If you see in the later on, actually, the IP as well as the licensing aspect as built into the system, actually. So in the over a period of time, again, in the 80s, if you see the high-tech products and then the human resources, because of the IT companies emerging, the human resources also became one of the innovation activity in the organization. So the innovation survey started so that they wanted to measure how innovative and then how exactly people are engaged in innovation activities. If you see in the recent, in the past, actually, in the 1990 onwards, actually, if you see the kind of the production technology surveys, innovation mentioned in the technical literature, intangible investment buying and selling of patents has become an active activity. Indicators of ICT, input-output matrix, productivity, venture capital aspects, M&A activity. These are the things which is included in the innovation indicator. But one interesting finding here is basically the IP and then the kind of patent activity is really it's always in the forefront, and then that is one of become key indicator for innovation in any organization. When you say this IP pyramid, exactly where we are actually, if you say in Indian corporations, actually they are more into defensive and cost control aspects. So what exactly this defensive and cost control I can say is basically, if you see a few years back, there was no position like a chief innovation officer or innovation leader or a IP officer in an organization. That was the condition actually, because the R&D head used to take care. This is a small part of the activity because it was it's a two roles managed by the same person. Today, if you say it's not so, definitely there are roles of that kind of innovation roles, and then as well as the IP roles in the organization. That shows that there is companies have become very focused on creating IPs on their products and services. The next is there is in the profits and the next level value chain. The India has to move up. Having a positions like a patent licensing officer or a patent license salesman. So these are the things which is going to happen. That means the focus on higher level of the importance in our organization when the patent, the IP department generates money to the organization. When I say how exactly IP is looked into the overall perspective of a device definition, when you come out of that, I have taken an example of a medical device. When you see a medical device, actually there are a lot of activity involved when you bring out a product. For the first thing is maybe a user requirement and statutory requirement, clinical trial protocols, regulatory requirement, medical legal requirements, ethical requirements, marketing requirements, statistical data requirement, right? Technology constraint, the process requirement, guidelines, standards, financial requirements. So everything actually, if you see there are compliances to be met, and then there are systems in place, and then that become a norms, and then that has become a business hygiene, and then company follows it in a very systematic manner. When you look at the IP aspect, it is not so. The IP activity becomes very, very, very aggressive and then very important only when the company gets into a litigation or it gets into a problem, or when really the mergers and acquisition takes place. Actually, that's the reason. Like I'm going to say that is the missing point here. Actually, the Indian corporations need to really focus more, or income companies need to focus more on the IP aspect, because if you don't do the due diligence effectively, you are going to lose all other activity what you have done for the lifetime kind of thing. So that's what I just wanted to bring out here in this particular slide. So we always think, like, when you say a patent or a IP, we always think that, like, you are going to make money suing someone, and then it's only a threatening kind of, it's a killer kind of opportunity by the competitors. So it's not so. Like, I think we can always look at, like, how it can use the value, like, how the patents can really create value to the organization in a positive sense, actually. So it's like, the Canon, it says, like, it is having 5,600 patents in photocopying machine, 200 in scanner, and 1,100 patents in the camera, 2,300 patents in the printer. So this shows that the leadership qualities or the technology it has got with the company. Even the Bosch, it says, like, every working day it's 14 patents. That shows that, like, it's not about only the selling the product. It's basically a newcomer wants to join an organization. He always says that, okay, this is the kind of company I need to work, because they are day in, day out, they are working on technology and creating value. So that's what this is the soft approach to the IP activity. When you look at, like, the hard part, actually, it's like, this is a very interesting, actually, the landmark case, like, it's on the in the code. So this featured on the top, the business daily in India. I thought, like, okay, this is the first case, so it's been featuring. Like, if you see, there was a follow-up also, which is still, like, it's on the headlines. That showed, like, the market cap fell from 50 rupees to 15 rupees in overnight, actually. So since I was there in this field, actually, I bought a lot of shares, because both are founder-led companies. I thought it may be settled outside the court. That's not happening, but still the share prices have come up, and then I made my money. So that really motivated us, like, exactly what automobile companies, like, especially the two-wheeler segment, it's a very common transport in India. We wanted to understand what exactly their portfolio are, actually. So this report, if someone wants, actually, I can send you the entire report for you for your reference. So if you see, like, out of top 5 companies in two-wheeler segment in India, the 2 companies which really are fighting in the court is basically the Bajaj and TVS. Apart from other companies, if you see, they have a very flat portfolio. That shows, like, the maturity in the industry is still not up to the mark. And interestingly, like, if you see the Bajaj and TVS, I just saw the portfolio. Both are fighting on the engine technology, but both are having the same number of patents almost. So when we talk about the IP, actually, we always talk about the patents and then other IP aspect, but missing component is basically a lot of opportunity in the design registrations and the contracts which we need to really look at. So this is a very interesting case, actually. What happened, it's a work for hire, EE is a design consulting firm. They used to design, the aesthetic design, aesthetics of the product, actually. So they got an order from, the M&U is a company wherein it gained ultrasound equipment to design. So later on, the design got a good appreciation in the market, and then the E&E calls up the CEO and says that, I want to participate in the national level competition. Is it okay with you? In the excitement, the CEO says, okay, go ahead, actually. Finally, they get an award. Even the design registration certificate with the M&U, but finally, even the award was for the best medical device. So the EE takes away the award home, actually. This is kind of loopholes which is in the contracts, actually, which has not been seen effectively. But today, even though the best medical device belongs to the M&U, but the award, a trophy, lies with E&D. So IP management could be called as a Cinderella of new corporate world by revealing her true value, swept her to prominence. So when we say the IP gardening, how we can start with, basically the basic IP policy should be there in place, actually. The 2 aspects I always wanted to look at. One is creating IP value, the IP value from the employees or the stakeholders in the organization. And also to regard and respect the IPs of others. That's very important, because That is a missing component wherein if you are able to really educate them effectively, definitely the most of the IP issues will reduce in the organization. One more aspect is basically that when you say IP, people think always it's only a lawyer's job. People don't look at it's an R&D or technologist's job also. So the missing component is basically the intellectual property management always works in the isolation. I was really interested in the Bayer how the IP managers now placed in a manufacturing plant. That is very interesting, to learn from Bayer. So this is this is going to be the key actually to integrate the new product development as well as the IPM together, so that in every stage of new product development you can have an IP checks and balances and effectively. So so that you will minimize the time frame actually for due diligence and patentability aspect. The IP education, if you see, even we talked about very importance of IP in India. We always it's in 2005, we are become TRIPS compliant, but still, if you see, most of the universities or technical universities doesn't have an IP component in their engineering stream. So that is very important. That is creating a lot of the time and effort needs to be invested by the companies who recruit them on and imparting the IP education. So in some of the companies where we do actually, we try to combine the legal component as well as the actual to their company's ecosystem. The engineers don't like two things actually. One is they don't like finance much and they don't like law. So if you teach the law, the law to the engineers, actually they'll not really, they'll go off to the sleep. So that's the reason actually we try to connect how it can really help your organization, how you can become an inventor, how you can really contribute as an inventor. That really that inspires them to be a part of the IP activity. So introducing the full range of IPR component in their education is very important, because most of the time people are not able to really differentiate what is intellectual property rights and what is patents and what is copyrights. So they always keep confusing with these words too. And more formal education doesn't work effectively. It should be a workshop based, so that people can interact and then do something, take some simple example and then show with the patents, and then some of the who are participated in the remote code trial. That was really excellent experience. Similar way, it should be more of an interactive, and then it should be lively so that people can really. And endorsing the certificate coursing. Actually, Indians like passing examination. They love examinations. If it's examination, people work hard, and then people will love to acquire more knowledge in an effective way and a systematic way. And then end of the day, they want some certification. So that's the kind of thing which we are. By endorsing, what happened, one of the client actually, they have some 500 people in their design department. Right now, actually, around 300 people have cleared this examination, so we are very sure that they know the basics of intellectual property effectively. So IP education, some of the intranet sites and newsletters, and then IPR Day, and then Inventors Day celebration. These are the things which really motivates them to understand. We talked about the employee mobility. Actually, that is our biggest concern in IP activities, because the maybe an IP manager, he himself will not really think that he has to stay with the same organization for next 3 years or 4 years. The IP filings of today he will not be there when the IP is getting granted. That is for sure. So that's the kind of even the inventors' mobility also is very high. So the non-disclosure agreement and the assignment deeds, especially the assignment deeds, is one of the things which is really the scary, the earlier days when you started these activities, you are not really set the process in place wherein whether you need to have assignment deed, or whether the inventor is really interested to really to come get involved, and then happy to sign the agreement or not. So we also talked about, the gentlemen also raised up questions on welcome and exit IP interviews. So we always see every company has got the exit interviews. Actually, in the exit interviews, you always related to the HR questionnaires or more. Always look at whether you returned your library book or not. These are the questions which comes in. Actually, this is drafted some 20-25 years back in the organization. You really need to know it's it's not about carrying some tangible things, the intangible things which is having a lot of points actually. Or many people have not signed their assignment deeds, and many people have not signed their Form 1 and Form 2, which is required to be posted to the patent office. These are the things which is missing. When after the employee leaves the organization, there is there is no reason that you can go to them and then request for getting signature done. These are some of the cases happened even in the Satyam versus UPaid case, because the inventor missed to sign some of the important papers before he left the organization. So this is the IP letter, actual newsletter. One more observation is who is the inventor? In India, many a times it so happens, whether the boss is involved or not, whether the HOD is involved or not, his name will be there in the inventors list. That's not the right way. And many times when the co-employee, the employee leaves the organization, sometimes they miss out his name also because he's not there anyway. So these are some of the blunder mistakes we do that may really get into the bigger problems at the later part. So how to harvest, how to have enough ideas in place actually. Most of the companies have a team something called patent evaluation team. The team always looked at how to shut down this invention more than how to add value to this invention. So that way, there is no proper feedback system to the inventor, why your invention not been selected for filing, how you can really improve upon, whether it's not a business, is it really something the business decision stops, or whether the technical reason it stops. If the technical reason stops, that feedback, right feedback can really make him to work on that and come back to the table again. This is a simple way of understanding how you can really harvest innovation in any small projects too. The first thing is the pool, pick, purify and purge. Whether you, what are the wow things, what are the challenges you faced actually, what are the mega improvements you did in that, what are the mega impacts you had in this invention. Is it first to the world, whether it is related something to the standard or improving anything on the standard, whether it's anything related to safety. These are the things, something some of the medical devices company will look at, hey, there's something related to safety. Okay, let us see to that. This is going to have more value. So these are some of the basic, the decision making skills in the inventors also is required, so that you will get a valuable invention disclosure form. The end of the day, we don't need enough number, but we need a quality patents and quality disclosures. Yeah, right. Yeah. So. One more thing, that the IP systems and security, when you're talking about the company still the lagging behind in making a proper budgeting for IP management system as well as the IP management as such. And reward mechanism for inventors, whether the cash or intellectual stock options, this can be thought actually. And then the most of the Indian companies actually, they're dealing with the emails, actually email system for invention disclosure form as well as the discussion within the organization. So this is basically is going to really if a company if a IP manager leaves the organization, everything will remain with his email ID, and then that may not be the right way of approaching. So setting up a system for disclosures could be a great idea. This is one of the in a case study by Case New Holland actually, which we implemented the system in place. Basically, there was no transparency of information earlier, and then there was no the time from the date of conceiving the idea to the filing used to be a very long process. So when you look at the process, actually, there was registering the idea. Once you register the idea, invention disclosure form, you need to get the approvals from the various departments and supervisors. That used to take at least some 3 to 4 months, and by the end of the day, you decide whether to go ahead or not. So, and then it goes to the patent department as a hard copy, and then they scan it and then upload it. If you see all those things, because it creates some kind of the process delay as well as missing some certain components and important signatures. So this online methodology, which is enabled the CNH to manage around 4,000 patents and then around 1,000 applications in the patent pending area. My conclusion is basically here is IP management is a strategic tool, and then we have to showcase that how it can create value, because then the top management is really wanted to get involved and then enhance the activities what they are doing. So the one more aspect is the people are looking at always a cost minded actually, that should be transformed into an investment mindset. So the moving from the just number game, actually filing n number of patents to value creation. That is actually, if you see them, every year our Indian accounts closes on 31st of March. If you see the highest number of patent filed on that day, because they wanted to have the numbers saying that it is filed in this particular year. So IP managers, the highest priority is basically to set up systems so that, like, even after leaving, if the top manager, IP manager leaves, the system continues, and the system will really make the organizations to grow. So the IP, the next wave I'm talking about, like, China and Korea, people are really, like, whichever the conference you go, people talk very high about that, and then kind of filing happening. So with this, actually, I'm closing my talk. Thank you very much for patient here. Let's catch up. Thank you.